The documentary A Trip to Infinity features a famous physicist from the renowned MIT in Massachusetts. Professor Alan Lightman says, "I looked up at the sky one night when I was 10 and I felt like my life didn't matter. I think it was because I was converting big space to big time. One star after another star after another star. I wondered if that would go on forever. I felt that the universe had existed a long time before my birth and that it would continue to exist long after my death, and that I was just a speck that didn't matter. I don't matter. My parents don't matter. Nothing matters. We're all nothing more than specks living in this brief moment. None of us were here 1,000,000 years ago. None of us will be here 1,000,000 years from now. And the universe doesn't care. It just goes on and on. So why do we waste our time going to school and going to the dentist and so on? Why do we waste our time knowing that nothing matters?" You sense this is not a documentary just trying to explain what the scientific concept of infinity is or how we can imagine it. The top scientists are also asked about what it means to them to deal with this complex matter. Professor Lightman's answer speaks of the experience of how small we as humans are in the universe of which we are a part. So small, in fact, that it can have a paralyzing effect. We don't matter at all. Nothing matters, he thought as a 10-year-old. But his testimony doesn't end there. After wondering why we waste our time knowing that nothing matters, he adds, "And then I fell in love, and that changed everything." With a beaming face, he says, "That mattered, even if we're both just specks in the cosmos." A Trip to Infinity is a scientific documentary. Religion is as good as absent from it, but the world of questions of meaning and religious imagination is never far away. I know I keep coming back to the fact that I just can't get over how informed people today pit science and religion against each other as if they were enemies. There is still a widespread double bias. A scientific person can't be religious, and the religious person can't be scientific. A Trip to Infinity is yet another reason to finally do away with this outdated, completely wrong idea. What's the documentary about? Infinity, the mathematical concept labeled with an 8 on its side, you know. In the field of mathematics, the existence of infinity is beyond dispute. Just start counting. There is no end to that. After all, you can forever go higher and higher by one number. Point is, however, that infinity does not conform to our known frameworks. For example, infinity plus 1 is infinity. If you put that into an equation and you delete infinity on both sides, you come to the conclusion 1 is 0. Nonsense, right? An insight I really liked was the parable of Infinity Hotel. Suppose you have an hotel with an infinite number of rooms and those rooms are all full. What if another guest presents himself? Can he get in? Yes, he can. You ask all the guests to move up a room. 1 goes to 2, 2 goes to 3 and so on. Since the rooms are infinite, everyone can move up and room 1 becomes available for the new guest. And even more punishing, a bus arrives with an infinite number of passengers who all want to check in. Can they still fit in? Yes, that's possible too. You ask all the guests to move to the room with the number that is double that of the room they have now. So 1 to 2, 2 to 4, 3 to 6 and so on. An infinite number of rooms with an odd number then becomes available and voila, all the newcomers have a place. A Trip to Infinity is full of these kinds of insights you can show off with during a conversation at a cafe, but at the same time they are bewildering. After all, They break through the frameworks of our thinking, the frameworks that made us feel we have figured out how our world works and thus how to control it. At one point in the documentary, scientists describe a black hole as a wormhole that acts as a portal to a universe where different physics applies than we know. When Anthony Aguirre, a theoretical physicist, has done his best to make that vivid for viewers, the filmmaker asks, "Do you understand that?" And his answer is telling. "It's totally clear mathematically, and when I look at this, I have no idea how that can be." Just as the concept of infinity works in mathematics, so God works in the life of the believer. For me, it's abundantly clear that God is part of my life, but in the words of Anthony Aguirre, when I look at God, I have no idea how that can be. For God does not fit the picture as my mind would like it to, creating the kind of paradoxes we've also come to know about infinity. Here is an ancient example of such a paradox. Can Almighty God create a stone so heavy that he can't lift it? It's a paradox that seeks to show that omnipotence, one of the characteristics of the biblical God, cannot exist. If God can create such a stone, he lacks the power to lift the stone. If God cannot make such a stone, it's beyond his power. This is a logical reasoning that applies to just about everything we know, but not to God. Just as almost everything we know grows in quantity if we double it, but not infinity. 2 times infinity is infinity. By the way, the God of the Bible has striking similarities in content to mathematical infinity. Indeed, the Bible speaks of eternity to name the divine. We often understand eternity as a concept of time, namely time that does not stop. But that is too simple. It's a translation of the Hebrew word olam, and that's not just a unit of time. It's a unit of time that transcends time. We humans cannot think outside of time and space. In the documentary, one of the scientists says, on some level we are limited by our normal understanding of space and time. Well, olam breaks through that limitation and thus functions as a kind of wormhole to a system of thought that we can't imagine. The eternal God is called to indicate that here we must leave our familiar frames. This is beyond our understanding. So why don't we just stay away from it, you might ask? For the same reason mathematicians and physicists are concerned with infinity. Ignoring the concept means not examining reality in its full scope. To be clear, there is no mathematical proof for the existence of the God of the Bible who makes himself known to people and connects with them in love. Never mind that we can rationally legitimize here once and for all the Christian proclamation that the eternal became man in Jesus. Or listen to cosmologist Stephen Alexander's conclusion. These are things that I believe that our minds can't know, but they're real and they exist. If you want to call that infinite, if you want to call that spirit, if you want to call that God, whatever you want to call that thing, I believe that that thing is for real, but not knowable. The newspaper De Morgen recently featured an interview with Stijn van der Voorde, a radio presenter who, as a non-believer, argues that within a few generations, humanity will no longer be plagued by religion. I quote from the interview. Religion was invented to explain phenomena such as thunder among the ancient Greeks, or to make hunting better. But in this day and age, I think people are wise enough to realize that organized religion makes no sense. Now, should someone make this statement in 1870, I could understand that. But meanwhile, not only has theology evolved, the positive sciences speak a completely different language. It's amazing how many people say unwise things about religion in the name of reason. Maybe check out A Trip to Infinity, Stijn.